Welcome, dear friends. Welcome, dear family members of victims of terrorism. Welcome to you who have come to mark this anniversary with an act of peace. Thank you, Peaceful Tomorrows. Thank you, Reverend Stone. Thank you, Peace Boat US. Thank you, everyone, for putting this together. All over the world, there are children without parents. There are parents without children, wives without husbands, families grieving due to the angry, humiliated, excluded, those in the prison of poverty, those living in resource-wanted countries, those who express their rage with violence. The terrorism that brings us together tonight, the new wars, the leaderless insurgencies, are creating a new culture of fear and a mistaken war on terror. Just as we called for a ceasefire for the war in Lebanon, we must call for a ceasefire for the war on terror. We will learn tonight of other, better ways to deal with anger and violence. The response of loved ones and political leaders to acts of violence, whether it's the subway in Japan, the trains in Gujarat, India, or Madrid, the buses of London, the cafes in Israel, the streets of Iraq, the World Trade Center, Beslan, and so many other places. That response has ranged from acts of violent revenge, including war, to tear-filled efforts to reach out and meet the families of perpetrators and families of victims. We gather in this remarkable building, a monument to peaceful initiatives of civil society, on the anniversary of but one of those acts of violence. We gather to understand why and how some people seek understanding and reconciliation so we can teach others who seek revenge. Ironically, tonight is also the 100th anniversary of Gandhi's Satyagraha, his call for a truth force for love and nonviolent action, for peace by peaceful means, as the UN Charter says. Tonight we welcome extraordinary people who have refused an eye for an eye and instead have extended a hand for a hand, even a hug. We are here to hear what one thing happened that made them choose this road to reconciliation and not the road to revenge. We're here to carry their message so that people will realize that it's the policies that lead to hatred and violence, and that in order to change those policies, we need to change the policymakers and build a culture of peace.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Stone, and I am the chaplain of the Church Center for the UN, and I want to welcome you with everything we have. In thinking about this particular event today, we realize that words can hold a lot. And we realize that silence does also. I remember when Faithful America published the reflections of those staff members who had just gone to Indonesia following the tsunami. And the following was quoted by this particular staff member as he faced the devastation of that horrendous tragedy. He just said, "There's a time for silence." Yesterday, as President Bush visited Ground Zero, the New York Times said, The official commemoration of the 5th anniversary of the attacks, one of many memorial gatherings around New York and the United States yesterday, began without a word. There is a time for silence. But there is also a time for a word. Many of our major religions, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam, all their creation stories begin with a word in the silence, in the void, in the dead of night where there is nothing. The Hindu story says, from the depths the humming sound began to tremble, Om. It grew and spread, filling the emptiness and throbbing with energy. The night had ended. Today we will pause in silence, and then we will hear a word from each of these persons who have created of the nothingness of grief, of dark nights, of disorientation and anger, a new world. A world of memory, future, hope, peace, nonviolence, commitment, choice, a perspective of life as treasured, a world of sharing and healing. Each have been asked, from all they have experienced, what one word describes the reason they have been able to move from such violence against themselves and their loved ones to peacemaking. So for one moment, realizing the creation of a world that's coming forth, will you honor this with silence for one moment?
Merci beaucoup pour l'occasion que vous nous donnez ici. À la mémoire de mon frère Mohamed Reda, à la mémoire de ma sœur Leila, à la mémoire de Hicham, à la mémoire de milliers d'autres anonymes victimes du terrorisme. Je reviens plus tard. Je reviens. À la mémoire de milliers d'autres anonymes victimes du terrorisme des 15 dernières années en Algérie, victimes de la folie meurtrière. Je vous salue, au nom des mamans, au nom des papas, au nom des survivants, membres de l'association Jaza Irona, au nom des femmes violées et écartelées, au nom de la vérité, au nom de la dignité, au nom de l'espoir. Soyons solidaires dans notre combat pour la non-violence, pour épargner le monde de tout acte qui endeuillera plus de familles. Construisons un monde de paix. Nous serons tous gagnants, car dans ce processus, il ne saurait y avoir de perdants. Assalamu alaikum.